Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stress Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village to raise their neurodivergent children with confidence and support. I'm your host, Frances Shefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent, walking this journey with you. Each week, we shine a light on the professionals, resources, and real world strategies that can empower you to navigate the IEP process and beyond without stress. Whether you're tuning in live on Facebook or YouTube or listening later on your favorite podcast app, we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in and meet today's amazing guest. Debbie Brown is the founder of Hill Country Dyslexia Services. She is passionate about empowering students with dyslexia. At Hill County Dyslexia Services, she has a team of highly qualified educational diagnosticians who will give comprehensive educational evaluations both online and in person. And in addition to the evaluations, they offer a variety of tutoring services designed to support learning and building confidence. Our goal is to create a nurturing environment where students can thrive academically and discover their full potential. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Dyslexia, I know it's a challenge because I know that it goes so undiagnosed for so many years. What are some, beginning the evaluation? I know for my daughter in kindergarten, the teacher said, oh, she's behind in reading, but the screening the school did for dyslexia didn't show anything.
Well, dyslexia kiddos are amazing people. They know that they have these difficulties, and they try to work around those difficulties in a variety of ways. But at some point, hopefully, they're caught early so that they could be diagnosed and they can get the correct interventions. But yes, I mean, in preschool and kindergarten, it can be where a child is mixing up sounds and syllables, and has poor trouble learning letters in an alphabet. So those are a couple of the signs. So this is really the time of year that the teachers are getting with parents and saying, oh, I think your child is a little behind. Let's see what we can do. And you are their rock, their advocate, and you partially, of course, and we love people like you to help. And so we, as a team, need to be together, and we need to tell the teachers what we see as parents, and help the teacher actually make sure that they diagnose and get the paperwork in to get the student tested early.
Yeah. So what are some of the signs, in the various grades, that parents can look for? Because I know it used to be everybody's, oh, they're reversing letters, but everybody tells you now that's normal and developmentally appropriate.
Exactly. Well, we were talking pre-K or kinder. So sometimes a lot of children can be late to talk. They can have difficulty rhyming. So if you've done any Dr. Seuss books with them and they can't rhyme themselves, then there is a disconnect. Or even sometimes they can have difficulties naming the days of the week or the months of the year or colors or even their phone number. So that is something that is also with those pre-K or kindergarten kiddos. In late first grade and third grade, it could be poor spelling. It could be frequently mixing up letters like left, and maybe they're switching the letters internally. They say calm for clam, or they don't have the suffixes. They're not reading the suffixes. They're not reading the little small sight words. Or they might even say the same word. They might say cat on one page, but they might say tact on another page. They don't get those words page by page. Then when you get to third through eighth grade, they might avoid reading. And of course, they're reading really more for knowledge at that point. They might have difficulty sequencing events. And then their writing, you can see it in their spelling. That's actually a secondary cause throughout all the grades.
So what are the recommendations for the older kids that get diagnosed much later in life? Because as we know, with our dyslexic kids, they're usually very bright and they find the workarounds, and you
Mhm.
don't realize it because
Mhm.
they're using the context clues. They're listening, with their ears to what friends are saying or other people are saying. So if kids are older getting diagnosed, is there something you can still do, or is it too
Oh,
late?
yes. Oh, definitely. I've seen college kids that have never been in classes before. I've seen middle school kiddos that have never been diagnosed before. Anytime that, hopefully they are diagnosed, but once they are, they definitely need some phonics intervention. They need phonics. They need the spelling patterns. They need to know the sight words. They need to know all of those things that will help them become better readers. I think any qualified person, like I myself as a CALT, a certified academic language therapist, we have extensive training in oral language and language period. And so we dive into, where are there spots of need, especially for those older kids, because those older kids might have some good skills, but there's holes in those areas. So maybe they don't know their vowel consonant E, their long vowel sounds in that syllable type, or maybe the schwa sounds are like an advanced sound. And so I will go over those with a student. I also go over the history of language, because our English language is built on Greek, Latin, and Anglo-Saxon. Especially 20% of our language is based on Anglo-Saxon. So I actually go through the history of language with students. For example, gymnasium, that has a Y in the middle of the word. Well, that comes from Greek. And if you look at other words, you might see that. So it really helps a student get that. Also, morphology is a big thing as well. And morphology changes the meaning of the word. So even when you have prefixes and suffixes, that's going to change the meaning of the word. So that is a real good skill to teach to those older kids. Again, filling in the gaps, really.
Interesting. So yeah, because I know, I had a potential client at one point, and it was a seventh grader,
Mhm.
and I'm like, you know what? Look, here's the reality. I can get a great IEP. Unfortunately, in the middle schools, they don't have the tools necessary to teach your child the way your child needs to be taught.
Well, different states do. My state that I live in, we have dyslexia teachers in grades all the way through high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So it's real important. It doesn't matter where your child is, what grade your child is, you still need that intervention. And so, yes, we have dyslexia teachers or dyslexia therapists in public schools and a lot of the private schools where I live, all the way through high school, because again, they might be later to be diagnosed. I just saw a student last year. He was a sophomore last year at A&M, and he had never been diagnosed. So I filled in the holes for him. So yes, you can definitely get your student. And if your state doesn't have that kind of classroom environment, and a lot of states don't, then find a certified academic language therapist, and they're a national organization and they are in every state and they are highly trained people. We get observed for at least a year. We have to do book reports. We end up passing a national certification. So it's like a 2 to 2.5 year process. For me, I almost felt like it was like my own little PhD, because most of us already have our masters. And I became a better teacher. Because I was already a classroom teacher, and I taught fifth grade for 3 years, and then I was teaching dyslexia. But when I got this certification, it made me just really, really focus in and see these students right away. And I could tell, even if they hadn't been diagnosed, that they definitely are dyslexic and that they should be diagnosed, because you really need that diagnosis for college, even for jobs. I had a young man who was in his 20s. He was working for a small city in the area that I live in, and he needed to take a test to be advanced. He had tried that test 26 times. He'd never passed it. So we tested him. He still was dyslexic. He got the accommodations and he passed the test.
Wow.
So, and so when you have the accommodations, just for the people that don't know, it makes the playing field level for the student. It doesn't give them an one-upsman. It makes it level. Maybe they need to say the answers orally because maybe they get bogged down. Their brain gets, all stopped up when they're trying to cognitively think about this reading. Because when a dyslexic does read and they're trying to figure out the words, they're using a lot of their brain power. And that's why sometimes it's better to have questions answered orally than on paper.
Right. And you see that a lot with our dyslexic kids. It's that like you see them reading and they're reading, but they're not comprehending anything.
Exactly.
Right? Because they're so focused and learning like on sounding out the words and getting the words and getting, like reading it correctly.
Yes.
They don't have the brain power to do it. But then you read to them, their comprehension is off the charts usually.
Yes, it's off the charts, even a higher grade level than they are, because that's one way they get around it. They listen very well. And unless they have ADD or ADHD, and then there's that kind of movie playing in their head while they're trying to listen. But they do use a lot of their cognitive brain power when they are reading. So it's really good to really understand the spelling concepts, the spelling patterns and grammar. And that way they don't use up all that cognitive power. That way they can understand and comprehend what they've just read. But there's strategies that we teach, such as maybe leaving a little picture in a paragraph, maybe leaving one word by the paragraph if they're reading a document, and of course, rereading is very, very helpful for all students, all the dyslexia students, because you get a deeper understanding. And then what we're teaching them is how to sound out the words, code the words, mark up the words so that they know, oh yeah, that says one particular word, not another word. So they do get the full meaning and they can comprehend their stories or their documents better.
Yeah. I want to go back on the certification because as we know, anybody can say, oh yeah, I'm a tutor. I know how to teach dyslexic kids. And I joke around with a very good friend of mine who's a reading specialist, and she has no special education training at all. She's a reading specialist and great with that stuff, but no special ed training. And then your special ed teachers that are doing the reading and stuff, most of them don't have any reading training. Yes. They're so separate. So for those parents out there that might be listening, they're like, okay, so I think I have an issue. I need my child diagnosed, or I need outside services because I would just rather pay than miss school or whatever. What should they be looking for? What questions should they be asking to make sure they truly have an academic therapist that can help their child and make the progress they need?
That's a real good question, because I see so many people online, and you can find anything online. You need to really delve into that person's background. Just because, and they say, oh, I'm an Orton Gillingham trained. That's a big thing. Everybody has that strategy, but was it a 1-day strategy? Was it a 3-day strategy? That's not going to be enough. Even a week or 2 weeks is not enough. You need to have a longer period of time. And so you need to ask questions about the therapist of how much training do they have? How long have they been doing this? Maybe even have a reference or two, because that's going to give you a good insight. Also, knowing your gut mom or dad feeling, having your child meet that therapist or that person that's tutoring, see how well they get along. And let your child say, yeah, I can do this with this new person, or this is not the right match, because you definitely want to get the right match. Because when I'm with my students, they tell me a lot of stuff, and they know that I'm a safe place for them to say whatever they can say. I even had one the other day said, I've never told anybody this, but da 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 da, and right. I said, well, I'll tell you this, da 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 da. So we share those things because they depend on me to help them. And when I'm helping them and it's the right thing for them, their confidence just comes back, because that's a big thing that I see with a lot of my kiddos. They don't have the confidence, yet they're smart. And you as a parent know that they're smart, and a lot of parents get frustrated because they don't know how to help their student or their child.
And so, unfortunately, I was just gonna say in our society, because of the way the school systems work and the test and all that other stuff, is that these kids wind up thinking they're not smart because
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
can't. I joke
Mhm.
around all the time. Everybody hears me. I can't spell. My husband can't spell. We tell our children, like, you know what? We'll practice the spelling words, but the reality is, chances are you're not going to be able to spell because, sorry, the genes are just
Yeah,
the way they
just
are.
not there, yeah.
But it does, you know what I mean? But does it really matter?
Well,
Like these
mhm.
days.
With all the computer stuff that we have now, spelling, it does matter if you're trying to fill out an application for a job. It does matter if you're sending a resume. You definitely need to use different apps that help you check your spelling, because that is important, because that's a reflection for you on you. So you definitely need to check that. Yes.
Right, but there's the apps to do it. So whether you
Yes.
know how to do it or not, it just reminded me, it's actually hysterical. My sister was talking about this one time. She goes, "Yeah, I had an employee one time that the spelling was awful." And I asked, "Well, don't you use spell check?" And the employee responded to my sister, "Well, yeah, but it keeps telling me how to spell it wrong."
Oh no. Oh no.
Like, okay, let's work this out a little bit, but
Yeah.
you got to understand that, like I say it all the time, I can't spell. So I know if they're popping out the word, although what I also sometimes have to do is also look up the definition of the word,
Yes.
because I'm like, is that the right word that I'm trying to say? Because especially with English, there's so many little tweaks that one little letter makes all the difference in the meaning, in
Yes.
words.
And during my intervention, I have a warm up and it's a very good warm up by Dr. Kilpatrick. It's widely used in my area, where you say the word spear, okay, take off, or spare, take off this, and it's pair. So it's really making the student be really focused on where the letters are and what's deleted in that word. And so it really helps their neural pathway, because I say I retrain a child's neural pathway, because the dyslexics really do think in literally in a different part of their brain. And so if I as a therapist can get them to think in the more efficient way, then that helps them, or to help them slow down if they're too speedy, they want to just hurry through things. But spelling, we work on the spelling, we work on dictation. And actually, when I dictate a sentence and we check it from the back to the front, because it's interesting, your brain can just not see what's wrong if you go from the left to the right. So right to the left is a way that we do check. And it also slows down the student, because they're not just quickly going through the sentence either. And I mean, we talk about what's at the end of the sentence, what's at the beginning of the sentence. So all of that, the phonemic awareness, the morphology, the phonics, the comprehension, the reading fluency, all of that is wrapped into what a COUT like me does. And we just give them the most for their money. And yes, if you do have to pay for us, it really is worth it. It's worth the investment, I think. And I've been so blessed to have so many students. And once I know that they're ready, then I let them go, and they are ready, and they know that they're ready. And we talk together. I show the ending reports and they're on grade level, they're reading on grade level, they've got their confidence. And then I also stay in touch with my families. I want to know what's going on with them.
Right. And so when do you know, I mean, I'm just thinking about situations like you said, that the tutor and the student don't mesh
Don't
well.
match. Uh-huh.
Or, like, what if, okay, they start out fine, but then they don't? Like, how can a parent tell, is it truly that, or is it my child not being motivated, or what can I do? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think it's most of the time. There are some kids that are not as motivated as other kids. I mean, there are. But I think it's having that communication with that therapist and with your child. And then I also think that you need evidence of what your therapist is doing with your child. The papers that come back, that the child has done, or whatever, the therapist or the person that's tutoring. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
And so that, so I don't know, did you hear me about say that or?
No.
Okay. So I think that it's a communication between all three of you. It's you talking to the therapist talking to you, your student, and also your therapist needs to show you evidence of what the progress a student makes. I mean, I do monthly progress checks, and if you're not seeing the progress, it's not probably either the right program or the right person for your child.
Got it.
Now, sometimes it can be not the right amount of time. Where I live, we have dyslexia teachers in the schools. So my dyslexia kiddos, if they're in public schools, they see teachers 4 days a week, 180 hours,
Wow.
180 minutes, excuse me, a week. That's about 3 hours, 4 days a week. And then I actually see them on top of that because dyslexic kiddos need repetition 500 times, 1,000, or 1,500 times on one concept. And that's a lot of times. Even if they're getting in the public schools. So I can get them there faster with the help of the classroom teachers as well.
No, and I love to hear that, like, because that's one of the balances that, especially with our older kids, of how much time they need to truly be able to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And how much time is that outside of the general curriculum, and so what are they missing, so it's like trying to find that balance of, can we really afford to miss an hour a day of, 4 days a week? Or are we going to fall behind in other ways?
Right. So you have private schools. I know that there's some therapists that go into the private school during the school day. So that's an option. Then in the summer, they can see them over the summer. The older kids, because they get out of school later. So it would be on a Friday or a Saturday or Zooming. That's another way online. That's another, unless they are just not a good candidate for being an online student. So that way you don't have to take them out of their classes. And we actually have a student like that. We've been seeing him. A dyslexia teacher is seeing him, and a writing composition is seeing him because he's a senior now in high school, and that's what they're doing. They're doing nighttime, and then more in the summer. It's really good to pack all these classes in the summer, but not see them during the school year. You still need to see them during the school year. Right. So it depends on your therapist's schedule and making a good, consistent schedule. And that's why I like doing this outside of school, because we're consistent. I make up a schedule with them and they know, yes, they're coming to me these days at this time, unless they're sick or I'm sick or there's, life happens.
Right.
So you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense. And what's the length of time? I mean, I know that's hard because it's individualized, but like generally, is this like years of therapy, or is it like 6 months to a year? What is like the general rule of thumb?
Well, again, we're changing the neural pathways of their brain. That's not going to be an overnight fix. And it depends on how how motivated the student is too, how often they see us, and since dyslexia is on a continuum, how dyslexic they are. So there's lots of factors. Typically, I'll see students for 2 years, and that's an average. That's not always what happens, but it can be the 2 different programs that I'm trained in. I see them 2.5 to 3 years. But again, if they're getting in school, then it can be less time.
Interesting. I'd never heard somebody say that dyslexia is on a continuum.
You haven't? Oh, really?
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah, because there can be, I call it mild, moderate, and severe. And that's why at our center, we look at the dyslexia report and we see what the scaled scores are. And we know, because of the scaled scores and having the experience, how dyslexic they are.
Got it. Interesting. And it sets up obviously how much they need time and all of that.
Because if they are they're very needy they really need this, and they're very, very low. They're very dyslexic. They're going to need it more often. They're going to need the interventions more often. And then sometimes as a student gets progresses, then I might say, okay, don't come 3 days a week, come 2 days a week. So I start cutting back the number of times, because our students can have a lot of wonderful skills. They can be athletes, they can be cheerleaders, they can be artists, they can be musicians. And so we want to make sure that we give them that time to do those things that they're good at, because that helps them feel more confident too.
Right. And I do know, and I've seen for kids that do not have the help at the beginning, that they wind up hating reading and not wanting to read, and and adults that don't want to read, especially like I'm an older parent, and but my generation, special ed wasn't really a thing back then. It was kind of like, no, you don't want special ed, you'll never go to college and stuff, which today we know that's baloney. Get the services you need. Earlier is always better.
Well, and part of what I do during my hour with them, because it needs to be an hour, is we read a book together. And so it varies as to, what do they like? And graphic novels are a big thing now. And I fully support graphic novels. That is reading. Learning places like Learning Ally, where they're listening to books, that is reading. I call that ear reading. But I try to get kids hooked onto books. And there's so many wonderful books out now. There's, we start out with our picture books with fewer words, and we go to the chapter books. And it amazes me how much my students want to read, really. I mean, and there's so many good books out. So I think that's finding that niche as to what your child likes. And then I had one student that roped horses or cows. And so we always read those kind of books. He liked the outdoors. So we read a mystery book about that. And I have another student that just showed me a really good book about being more confident and having the skills and so forth. And so there's so many varieties of really good books. So that's really what I do part of my time with the child, because we want to make sure that the instruction is interesting for the child, but yet it's still educational, still teaching them and still working on those neural pathways and the phonics. So I'll say, oh, look at this word, it's rhyming. Or what do you think about you? What do you do in this situation? So we talk about that. So it's really not just reading, writing, and spelling. It's really what I really feel like I'm really helping the whole child, really the whole child. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is, because it all wraps around, because if you don't have the confidence to read, your confidence in everything else goes.
Yes.
And I know, like, for me, my story that I put out there often is that, like, I grew up thinking I wasn't smart because I couldn't spell. My grammar was okay. Math, my brain was different, and so by society's standards, I wasn't smart, but I wound up at law school, so obviously there's something smart there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But, that's the thing. Like I say to my kids and all the neurodivergent kids and adults and everybody, is that there's nothing wrong with your brain. It just works differently.
Exactly.
Like, if all of our brains worked the same, how boring would life be, right?
And I say, especially to new parents that are going, what is this dyslexia about? I say it's like you go on a road and you see a sign that says detour. Okay, you detour around, you finally get to where you need to be, but it can take you longer. And that's, to me, what dyslexia can be. It takes longer to get the answer, but you can get it. And so that's why I go back and say, but then I'm going to give them the skills out of my tool chest that I know, and give your child the skills to really help take away those barriers and take away the detours. We want to go, quicker. Right. And so that's what we help them do. And a lot of times I see a big change in the first month. The parents are saying, oh my gosh, my child wants to read. Oh my gosh, the child's reading the stop sign. Oh, and we went to a restaurant and they read a word. So that, to me, shows that they're in the right place. And if you're seeing if you're not seeing that, like going back to your question earlier, if your child really doesn't want to go to that person, you need to find somebody else. There's plenty of people out there that are really qualified that can help your child and really connect with your child, because that's what you want.
Right. And that goes back to, which I say all the time. It's like, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that tutor. It's just not the right one. It's not the
Exactly.
right fit, like I say that, even like with me as an education attorney, like I'm not the right fit for everybody. We
Hmm.
have different
Hmm.
personalities, so
Hmm.
I'll recommend you to another education attorney, that has a
Hmm.
different flavor to them, and
Exactly.
the same with the tutors. And as long as they're, as you said, certified and have the training,
Yes.
then
Highly
finding the right
trained.
one.
Mhm.
Highly
Highly
trained, right.
trained.
Right, because, like, I remember I was a tutor when I was a teacher. I didn't have any special training, but I could tutor,
Hmm.
because, I said I could, and I did okay. But, like, thinking about it back then, like, yeah, like, having somebody that's trained to tutor in math or whatever might have been better. But, I got by and the kid did better, you know?
Well, like Louisa Moat says, reading is rocket scientist. Our brains are not wired to read. And so we really need people that are specialized in this area that know what they're doing and know where the spots are that that child needs for that lesson to really do that. And then there's a saying that is in my community, my professional community, and it's go as fast as you can and slow as you must. And so if I see a child and boy, they're getting that concept really easily, then we're going to move on, because why belabor the concept they already know? Because I've got a lot more to talk to them about.
Right. And that's I have seen that some tutors, language therapists are very like, well, this is the program and I have to do A, then B, then C, then D. But like, as you said, but if you do A, then B and realize they know C and D, skip them, go to E. And you have to know what you're looking for and how to modify to get to
Mhm,
where.
mhm, mhm,
I like that. As fast as
mhm.
you can, as slow as you must.
And
Yeah.
that's really the best way. And really, it shouldn't just be that way. I'm trained in two areas. I'm trained in Wilson and basic language skills, which is alphabetic phonics. But then I pull in other things as well. I really like Read Naturally for fluency. So I have that as part of my program. And so the kids are taking a little short 2-paragraph story home and reading that for fluency. And that really boosts their fluency because they're doing repeated readings. They might start out at 30 words a minute. I give them a goal of 60 words a minute. They come back to me. They might read that same passage at 64 words a minute. Well, that's going to help their confidence. That's going to help their fluency. And sometimes, our students memorize things. So that's another thing we have to look out for. We need to make it varied enough to where they're not memorizing, because they're smart kids. They really are.
Mhm.
So it's making that program unique for that unique child. And every child is different. I mean, I have a family where I've seen 3 out of 4 kids, and they're all different, all
Yep.
different. I've
Yeah.
even seen twins, and I won't ever see twins at the same time again, because they need different things as well.
Right.
So it's really making it and modifying it that fit that child's needs. And then that's why, you're the pro in IEPs, and you're going to fit the IEP to that particular student's needs, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so
That's
you don't want something that's just generalized. You want something
right.
specific for them. So that's why I'm in the same, I do the same thing with my programs.
Yep.
I make it unique for them.
And right, because if not, it doesn't work.
Yes, it doesn't
Doesn't work.
work. And so again, we want to get them out. We want to get them successful, and we want them to be able just to be as successful as they can be.
Yeah. What are some pointers for parents that might be listening for them to do at home, to
Sure.
help their kids read?
Well, I think reading to them is wonderful, because you can tell when your voice gets higher, when you're asking a question, or louder when you're reading something that's exciting. So I think that's the repeated, or reading out loud is a very good thing. Repeated readings is very good. Maybe your child likes one particular book. Have your child read the book to you. Or maybe if they're a little older and they're a little bit more advanced, but they're still having some difficulties, you read a page, they read a page. That's another option. Another thing is you can play I Spy. So let's say you're going to say, okay, I see something in the room that starts with a D. And they go, what is that? Oh, that's a desk. Okay, now sound it out. D-E-S-K, desk. And so, be particular about your words, but you can do those kind of things. Or cat, of course, that's an easy one. Dog, but you want to make it fun for them.
Right.
So that's one thing. Then building their knowledge with vocabulary words. I find that I'm constantly talking to kiddos about homophones, dear and dear, or peace and peace. And idioms are a very good way to help your child. I could eat a horse. I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Well, what does that really mean? So it's our English language is very complex, but it's very interesting, and it has so much history. So that's something. High frequency words is another thing. Even flashcards with high frequency words. I do that with one of my students, and I only have 3 flashcards of 3 sight words. And she looks at the word. Any was really hard for her. A-N-Y. It took her 3 weeks to get that word. I would show her the card. I would say, what is that word? Any. And I would have her write it down, and she would say A-N-Y. Then she would give an example in a sentence. Okay, let's give an example. So she would do that to really keep that repetition going on.
Right.
And then when she had mastered that word, we moved to another high frequency word, because there's over 100 high frequency words. And it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, attorney, a teacher, anybody, a gamer, you're still going to have to read words.
Exactly. And I like that with the high frequency. I didn't even think about it, because so many people are just the skill and drill, and they'll have like 20 words, but no, really get to understand and know one word and then move on.
And also they might know how to read it, but they might not know how to spell it. So it kind of goes back into that spelling. So it's reading, spelling, and applying. And that's what, again, we do that with our concepts too. We're doing a discovery. They're listening for the sounds. We're creating words. We're writing words. We're spelling words. We're reading words with that sound, and then integrating and spiraling in it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wish people would ask you more?
Ask me more. Goodness, that's a good one.
More often, yeah.
I don't think so, but I really think it's so worth it to invest in your child and get the help you need, even if it costs. Maybe you don't go on a vacation. Maybe you have one less meal out as a family. It's so worth it, because you're investing the money now for your child for later. So, and their whole well-being. So I think that's something that if parents do have a concern about the money, and it does cost, I really think it's just worth their time and their money, because a child is irreplaceable. And so, very, very valuable. So I would definitely do that. But
in the future. No, I get it. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, because I know you're based in Texas and you do in person and online, so you can do nationwide. What's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
They can reach me at my website at Hill Country Dyslexia Services.com, or me personally, my website or my email is going to be Debbie, DEBBIE at hcdyslexia.com.
Awesome. And we'll have those in the show notes. Debbie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
It was fun. Thank you. I'd love to do it again. And I hope parents get the help that they need for their kiddos as soon as they possibly can.
Thank you. Okay. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with somebody in your village. You can always learn more and contact and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.